Economic rent. This is a term that most people have never heard of, but it's a common term in the world of economics, although it doesn't hit the papers very often. It is the unearned increment that people earn if they control the monopoly over a resource or pollution or land. An unearned increment, that means they earn it while they're sleeping, or they don't have to do anything. They don't have to lift a finger to earn that unearned increment. My partner and I bought a house in Toronto for $150,000 10 years ago. Now it's worth $300,000. We've been paying off our mortgage on the $150,000, but if we sold it tomorrow, we'd get an extra $150,000. We didn't earn that $150,000. Some of it, of course, is inflation. We didn't earn that unearned increment, but it's ours. The people next door are renting. They didn't get anything while they slept. They have no nest egg to leave with should they decide to leave Toronto, whereas we do. So whenever you or your company owns a finite resource, like land, if you own a finite resource, you receive rent from it. Economic rent, it's called. It's an unearned increment. The unearned increment is community generated. If you own a piece of land in the middle of the outback, it's worth next to nothing. But if it's downtown Melbourne, it's worth a fortune. Even though it's the same size piece of land perhaps, but because the community lives around Melbourne, around your piece of land, it becomes valuable. If there's no one living around it, it's next to worthless. And what I said before, anyone who uses or abuses the global commons, which means polluting resources or monopolizing land, should compensate the landless, or the people who don't use resources, or the people who don't pollute. Because the global commons belongs to us all by birthright. A new way of thinking about the planet. Most of you already think that way, but you have to understand that we do not have economic equity in our society. Therefore, we need to modernize or adjust our economic system to serve our moral and ethical values. We have moral and ethical values, I'm sure all of us in this room, that say that everyone should have their fair share and you shouldn't have poverty. But until governments collect the unearned increment from those people who monopolize pollution, resources, or land and distribute it fairly to all of us, we will never get beyond poverty and inequity in Australia, in Canada, and in the whole world. This is a little deviation. Arthur Pigou, Pigouvian taxes, many of you I'm sure have heard of that. A tax levied to correct the negative externalities of a market activity. They say capitalism is an externalizing machine. It's designed to externalize costs. If you destroy a forest or pollute the air, that's an externality. It's not your problem. If you produce a product that you can't dispose of it safely, it's not your problem. Well, Arthur Pigou says it is your problem. Carbon tax, that's a big debate that we're talking about tonight, and Australia has finally decided to no longer be a climate change denier, your Prime Minister. So we sort of have three choices. Emissions taxes, cap, trade and reduce, point of entry taxes or carbon taxes, or carbon equity and rationing. Some people swear for carbon equity and everybody gets a swipe card, and every time you buy something, someone has assessed the carbon content and up goes, and when you reach your 20 tons per year, you're cut off. But then you have to roll somebody to steal their card, I suppose. So anyway, I'm not recommending carbon equity. Carbon emissions, I already talked about the downside of that. It doesn't generate a revenue stream for government. Plus, if you do carbon equity, you are setting a finite resource, and that is the right to pollute. So it's prone to speculators buying up carbon permits, inflating the price, and then incurring huge capital gains or profits out of other people's right to pollute. And it's all somewhat perverse, in my opinion. So as I said, the best one is a point of entry. If you did point of entry taxation of carbon in Australia, there's how many places does oil come into the country or out of the ground, or coal or gas? You're talking about a dozen or 2 dozen points of taxation. Very simple to administer, very simple to make sure it happens. And also you provide a revenue stream. I had this discussion with John Fane on ABC that we should be able to address climate change without a new tax, without additional taxes. And he couldn't understand this for the life of him, but I said, no, We should not implement any new taxes. It should be part of a revenue neutral tax shift. For every dollar we tax off carbon, we should reduce income taxes or business taxes by exactly that same amount. And we can apply the carbon tax as much as you need to get to where we want, which is probably a 90+% carbon emissions reduction by 2050, without a new or without an additional tax. Tax shifting, that's what I was talking about. Green Party people always say we're not tax raisers, we're not tax cutters, we're tax shifters. We want to shift off of goods and onto bads. Jobs, do we tax jobs? Do we tax incomes? Well, according to tax bads, not goods. No, we want people to have jobs. You go to work, as soon as you get to work, the government starts taxing you. You're punishing you for having a job. That's nuts. You have a business, you start a business, you sweat equity, you work like crazy. Finally, you show a profit, the government starts taxing you. They're punishing you for having a successful business. It's crazy. Consumption, your GST, the hated GST. We have one in Canada too. We hate it as well. It is discouraging people from buying stuff they need. And that's dumb as well. We should tax the pollution that a company produces, the resources that it uses, and the land that it monopolizes. But we should tax the resources before it gets into the first company so that it greens every step of the manufacturing process. If you apply it at the gas pump, you're letting the car manufacturers off the hook, and that's dumb. Tax it early in the production process. We should untax productive labor and innovation. That's sort of the same thing, and uptax the use and abuse of the commons. The government, the economic system we have now, we're handing out shovels to all of the industry and commerce people, and we're telling them to build a tower. And they say, well, how can we build a tower? We have shovels, so we have to dig a hole. You know, we're giving them the wrong tools to do the job that we all want. Business, they don't want to dig a hole, they want to build a tower because they care about the planet just as much as any of us. In fact, many of us are business people. We need to make it possible so that businesses can make money and save the planet at the same time. Just like consumers should be able to save money and save the planet at the same time. That's when we shift, the wholesale shift of taxes off of labor, off of businesses, off of consumption, and onto the use and the abuse of the commons.